You're entering the future-ready CNBC TV 18 Ebix Cash Studio.
Hello and welcome to CNBC TV 18 Ebix Cash Studio. I'm Ritu Singh. Now, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was hailed as a game changer for the bad loan resolution landscape in India, and it is now in its 5th year. But 5 years in, some serious questions arise. 1, has it led to higher recovery? 2, is it helping resolve bad loans in a time-bound manner? And 3, does it remain the best tool to resolve bad loans? We looked at data to answer some of these questions. Now, the latest update from the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India shows that of the 4,500 odd cases that have been admitted into the NCLT so far, about 63% have been closed and 38% are still ongoing. But out of these, only about 14% have been resolved so far, and almost half have ended up in liquidation. But when we talk about liquidation, it is also very important to note that 75% of these cases which ended up in liquidation were already sick or defunct, and therefore the chances of recovery were anyway lower to begin with. Now let's look at the number of cases that have been added over the years. 126 in the last quarter, 533 in the financial years between the financial years 20 and 21, and it's lower than the previous years because that is when IBC was in suspension. Now, some recent instances of large haircuts by lenders have cast a shadow on the recovery under the code. Let's again look at the data to answer that. Now, recovery by financial creditors under the code, that fell to about 36% cumulatively from about 39% in the previous quarter. It rose over the previous year when IBC had remained in suspension, although it is lower than the levels that we saw as of March 2020. But does it remain the best tool for recovery is a question we're asking, and it certainly does seem so when you compare it with the other tools of resolution like your DRT or your SARFAESI or your Lok Adalats. I mean, the recovery has been far higher. The other key area of concern has been the long delays in what was supposed to be a time-bound resolution process. Above all else, 180 days was the ideal target, up to a maximum of 330 days. And here's what data shows. 75% of the ongoing cases have already exceeded 270 days, and the ones that have been resolved, they also took more than 400 days on average. So in summary, while there is a lot left to be desired when it comes to the code, experts believe IBC has put control back in the hands of the lenders, improved credit discipline. Remember, the law is all of 5 years old, so it continues to evolve and hopefully improve. Now let's get deeper into the contours of the code to assess what has worked, what hasn't, and what is to come. We are now joined by the man with all of the answers, MS Sahu, the chairperson of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Mr. Sahu, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. That very first question on recovery to you, what's really gone wrong? Is the code to blame, or 5 years on from the spectacular success of the Essar Steel and Bhushan Steels to now Videocon, is it time for a review and redesign of the code?
No, I think you have to look the code from its entire perspective. What it has achieved in the span of last 5 years. It has revolutionized the insolvency resolution process. It has done several other things, starting from rescuing the companies from financial stress, providing freedom of exit, enabling the creditors to realize their dues, releasing the entrepreneur and assets for efficient uses. The outcomes, the list of achievements is quite long. It has established the supremacy of the markets and rule of law insolvency resolution process and professionalized the insolvency resolution process. It's not surprising that the World Bank, which assesses the different 200 economies in terms of ease of doing business, has a parameter on resolving insolvency. In terms of that parameter, India's rank has improved from 136 to 52 in the past 3 years of its implementation. The next 2 years we do not have data. Last year World Bank did not come out with the data, and this year we expect in October. So absolutely nothing has gone wrong except in terms of time. Your concern was about recovery. So please look at the objective of the code. We expect the code to be panacea for so many evils, but we should remain focused. What the code started to do, what was its initial objective, was that reorganization. Okay. And it says reorganization by 2 ways. First, attempting to rescue a company through a resolution plan, And if that effort fails, then go for liquidation. So the law provides for two options and it enables a market process. Market has to choose which one is good. So let me take you to some international markets. United States has Chapter 7 proceeding, Chapter 11 proceeding. Those proceedings both include individuals and businesses. I will limit only to businesses.
Yeah.
Chapter 7 proceeding is essential for liquidation. Chapter 11 essential for reorganization. Now look at the number of such proceedings commenced in United States. 2/3 of the proceedings, they start with section Chapter 7 and 1/3 start with Chapter 11. That means even before starting, at the time of the start, 2/3 of the companies the market has decided to liquidate. Only they are trying the luck with a balance 1/3 of the company whether they can be rescued or not. So we have to look at the objective being reorganization and two options of reorganization. Whether it is working or not, you have to look at whether there is a reorganization. That means whether a viable company has been rescued and unviable company has been liquidated. And if liquidated or reorganized by resolution plan, whether value has been maximized and in what time frame it has been done and at what cost it has been done.
But Mr. Sahu,
except for time frame, I think.
Yeah,
yes.
You know, we'll come to the time frame in just a bit since we're speaking only of recovery at the moment. Are you arguing that recovery is not the best metric to judge the success of the IBC? I know you often cite the fact that recovery as a percentage of the liquidation value, because these companies are already sick, is quite high. So does the narrative have to change to stop looking at recovery as a proportion of the claims to a proportion of the liquidation value?
Yes. So please look at the companies. Let's say there is a company called Ghotiranga Minerals, Orchid Biotech. These were the companies where they owed 8,100 crore to banks. When they came to IBC process, they had absolutely zero assets and the bankers got only 0 rupees. On the other hand, look at Binani Cements, MBL Infrastructure. In these cases, the creditors got 100% of their money. Now please consider why in one case there is a 0% haircut, in another case there is a 100% haircut. That means this is nothing to do with the IBC probably. Probably the reason lies somewhere else. So you have to look at when a company enters the IBC process, what is its state of health, as much as the outcome depends at what stage of the disease the patient arrives at the hospital.
Well, Mr. Sahu,
if the patient arrives with a substantial...
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
No, please carry on. If the person arrives with a...
If a person reaches very late at hospital, the best doctors can do little.
Well,
the companies which have been rescued, when they entered the IBC process, they had assets valued at 22% of their claims. That means at entry, the creditors were staring at a haircut of 78%, and that has come down to 60% or so. But more important is the company has been rescued.
Okay, let me take forward.
You have to look at some figures are circulating. Yeah, some, please. There are some figures. You have to see the outcome has to be seen in relation to amount of claims or amount of assets available on the ground. Market will not give a value because the company owes so much. Market will give the value on what the company brings on the table. IBC maximizes the value of the assets in existence, not probably what existed earlier.
Okay, Mr. Sahu,
you have to be realistic. What is on the ground? What are the options?
You know, when you say it is important when the patient is brought to the hospital, so picking up from there, shouldn't the law itself incentivize banks to bring the companies that have visible problems to the IBC earlier? Because in a lot of cases, like you said, it's only when problems emerge, defaults have happened, that cases are brought to NCLT and there's little to be done at that point.
Yes, we had the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code in 2016. The companies which are coming today or came in 2016, 17, 18, many of them were defunct or were in BIFR for decades ago. The companies which are getting liquidated, 3/4 of them were defunct. So that means one cannot say that there has been a delay the banks did not bring, because this system became available in 2016. Yes, there was initial inertia on the part of the banks to invoke IBC process that required an amendment in banking law, that required RBI to give directions. But nowadays those things do not arise.
Yeah.
What we are dealing today are essentially legacy matters.
Yeah.
Once legacy matters are over, the outcomes would look much better.
Okay, so no changes per se are expected in the law to incentivize banks as of now. But, you know, when earlier you were speaking of the inefficiency, a big cause of concern has been the bandwidth at NCLT itself. Almost half the courts don't have judges. I mean, we often hear of instances where, you know, a judge is attending a case in Bangalore in the morning, in Bombay in the afternoon, and in Kochi in the evening. So on that front, is that also one of the big reasons why recovery is getting hit? Because by the time the case, you know, is in the hands of lenders, and bids are invited and litigation goes on, net present value of money is also going down.
Yes, there is enough incentive in the code to start a process early and conclude the process early. It is for the stakeholders to take a business call whether it is the right time to initiate the process. You have to look at a delay is not coming only because of NCLT. It comes at different stages, starting with the admission process. At that time, we find 5 hearings, 10 hearings, a top resistance to admission. It happens for 2 reasons. One is that we have a habit of getting into an adversarial process, and mostly promoters or existing management resist the admission. But the law says that there is a kind of penalty, something section 66(2), which has not yet become very popular. That makes the directors liable for the loss the creditors suffer during the period this insolvency process is delayed. The code has enough incentives. The commercial people, banks, they know if they start early, they close early, they will get a lot better outcome. There are problems, of course, NCLT capacity problems are there, and we know that government has taken efforts, and you can see probably soon.
Yeah.
And in view of the appointment process going on, and we understand that government is alive to this, and hopefully we should have full capacity of the NCLT soon.
You know, Mr. Sahu, the Standing Committee on Finance recently suggested that perhaps the Insolvency Bankruptcy Board of India, the ILC, should consider a minimum threshold for recovery below which, you know, those sort of bids should not be accepted. You know, in theory, how would something like this, or even in practice, how would something like this work? Because if you don't get the required amount of bid, will the companies just end up in liquidation?
No, I think I would not like to discuss that, because that is a view Standing Committee has given. There is a due process through which government processes, it goes up to Parliament. Probably it will not be also appropriate to discuss this.
Okay, you know, the other point that I wanted to bring up is also, you know, coming back to the inefficiency and what the law can do to fix that. What are some of the apparent loopholes that you're working on? You've also put out some discussion papers on the conduct of the COC and so on. So what is in the work? And give us a sense of what next is to come as far as the IBC is concerned.
One is there is a continuous effort from the government side and IBBI side to address any emerging concern. That is why we see 6 amendment acts in less than 5 years. That shows the dynamism of the journey and commitment of the government to the insolvency reforms. But we should not always be looking at solutions to problems through the state agency or legislation or NCLT. Why delay happens at NCLT is not the only reason that NCLT does not have enough strength. It is because we come up with the multiples, dozens of miscellaneous applications, interim applications. So NCLT probably has disposed of lakhs of such applications. So we are actually on frivolous matters, we bring such matters and trouble NCLT. But without getting into the law, yes, there is always an intention. Currently, a discussion is going on among the stakeholders what needs to be done in the IBC. And you also notice the discussion paper, IBBI is trying to bring a code of conduct for committee of creditors. But those things can be done in the law, but many things can be done without changing the law. Insolvency process is an orchestra where the market participants, the creditors, the resolution applicants, promoters, all of them have defined roles, and insolvency professional, adjudicating authority are there to assist them to go with the process. If any of them does not cooperate or at times actively non-cooperates or takes a malified action, it becomes difficult to complete the process in time or get the good outcome. The first is the committee of creditors. They have to be in the shoes of the businessmen. They have to imagine limitless possibilities of resolution and visualize the value and make that value visible to the market so that there are many resolution applicants competing to give the value. The resolution plan is defined to mean a plan which addresses the stress of the company, does not limit the option. It is not only restructuring of the debt. As you refer to the Standing Committee of Finance, they also refer to one section 30, regulation 37 of the IBBI regulation, saying that this enables so many options for resolution. And this provision should come to statute. It can mean change in management, technology, product portfolio. It can mean merger, amalgamation, demerger. It can mean anything. The COC has to be business-like and its conduct has to be above board. That's why we are talking about the code of conduct. They must not stray. Their whole domain is commercial wisdom. They should be in commercial wisdom and not try to decide the matters which are not within their domain.
Okay.
Similarly, the promoters and the existing management, they have to cooperate for the takeover of the company, for running the company as a going concern.
All right.
Every one of us, IBBI, NCLT, IP, every one of us should play our role as required under the statute. And that can make a huge difference. One can think of changing the law for bringing, let's say, cross-border, bringing group insolvency, operationalizing individual insolvency. So many things can be done. But without that also, there is scope, lot of scope to improve the outcomes.
Okay, so we have the IBBI chairman hinting that there are no amendments coming to the IBC law after all of those comments, that came in from the industry after the Finance Committee's report, of course. We'll continue our conversation with Mr. Sahu on the other side. Stay tuned. We're going into a very short break. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We're in conversation with MS Sahu, the chairperson of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Mr. Sahu, thanks for staying on with us. We were talking about the lack of infrastructure at NCLT, but has the lack of quality of judges at NCLT also been a spot of concern for you?
See, we are doing some reform of which we did not have any experience earlier. Something completely new, incentive compliant, market-led, time-bound. We started with the new, for the first time we got insolvency professional, for first time we got NCLT. So it of course takes time. Even the committee of creditors, as I just mentioned, they have to be more business-like. Every one of us is on the learning curve. And I don't think that we can get people or professionals of high quality or members of NCLT or members in IBBI somewhere without any experience. So if you implement these reforms for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then gradually the capacity is developed in the system. So for insolvency professionals, IBBI has recently come up with the idea of a graduate insolvency program. The pass outs of that program completing a 2-year course have started joining registered professionals. So we should expect improvement of capacity, the quality of the people in the system. Over time, it's not an overnight exercise.
Another point about the IBC that keeps coming back and back in debates is Section 29A. Now, many practitioners say disallowing existing shareholders under which the company defaulted from bidding actually reduces the number of bidders for some of these companies that are very sick. So, would IBBI be prepared to drop this section altogether? What are your views on the matter after 5 years of, wisdom behind you? See, you must see in what context Section 29 has come. And the
beneficial impact the economy has got. By 29A, there is no prohibition on existing shareholders or promoters to submit a resolution plan. It says that any person who suffers from any of the ineligibilities is prohibited to submit a plan. So there is no prohibition on a promoter as such unless he is a willful defaulter, unless he is debarred from accessing security market. There are so many ineligibilities. So we must not confuse that promoters are debarred. Assuming that 29A is removed and only one additional person is added, will it make so much difference to market that the entire Indian economy, the world economy does not have enough resolution applicant? Just because one person is prohibited, there are not enough bidders. So I don't think, let's say stock market, because there may not be many people to buy or sell the securities, we will allow SEBI, let's say, debars many people from trading in the market. We do not allow those people to trade in the market because there may not be many buyers and sellers in a security. So if you want to maintain the integrity of the system, credibility of the system, if you want the resolution to be sustainable, it does not become a repeat game every time. If you want to avoid moral hazard, 29A has served the purpose, and it's a very welcome thing that has happened.
Okay, so Section 29A is not being done away with. That's the word coming in from the IBBI chairman. Mr. Sahu, before we let you go, a couple of more questions, especially on the pre-pack for MSMEs. Now, the feedback from the industry has been that the process itself is too complicated for some of these MSMEs to adopt. What are your thoughts on the matter? Can it be made simpler? What are the changes that can be brought in? And, going forward, are you looking at expanding it to larger companies, and when?
Okay, let me respond to the second question first. Pre-pack has just come in. It has practically not been used. Unless we experience something, this is an economic law. Economic law evolves through experimentation. So let us see how this process is working. Let people use it first before we ask for something more. Pre-pack is something new. The market will take time to understand. Market has also many other options of resolution. They will compare pre-pack with other options available to them, and only when they are convinced that pre-pack is the best option for them in a particular circumstance, they will use it. And the law recognizes that there is a substantial part of the pre-pack process would happen in the informal part. And the law envisages up to 90 days time for the informal part to conclude. Thereafter, the formal part starts. So since the law came in April, it's about just 90 days or so the law has come. It is also too early to expect many applications, but I understand a few applications have been filed. But as regards the process, many things have been left to the market participants, debtors and creditors to do informally among themselves without putting in a black and white in a strict format. That gives them the flexibility. And procedure, if for a businessman it may look a little complicated, but for the professionals it is quite simple. If you wish, I can explain the process.
Sure.
And
Mr.
the process chart is a very neat chart if you look at.
Okay, Mr. Sahu, since we run out of time, one final thought. What is the one biggest change that IBC in its current form today needs? Just in one line, since we're out of time, sir.
The law itself does not need a major change. Okay. The participants themselves have to play by the provisions of the code.
All right. The law does not need a change. The participants need to change their, use of the law and the way they're approaching IBC. That is the word coming in from the chairperson of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Mr. Sahu, many thanks for taking time out and joining us here on the show. With that, we wrap up this special edition of Breaking Back Debt. Thanks for tuning in.